Andy Campbell is a resilient survivor and inspirational author who has overcome numerous life-altering challenges. He was a victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, and the loss of his mother at an early age and eventual estrangement from his father. His battle with stage 4 pancreatic cancer and the loss of his youngest son to suicide. Despite enduring multiple surgeries, grueling chemotherapy treatments, and the tragic loss of your youngest child, which I can't even imagine. Andy has demonstrated remarkable strength and perseverance. Through his experiences, he has developed a unique perspective on resilience and the power of his 15 core beliefs, which is what we're excited to hear about today.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Andy lives with his wife and remains actively engaged in the lives of his 3 remaining adult children as he continues to support his family while managing his own health challenges. His book, Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks, shares the principles that have helped him navigate life's darkest moments, where he offers hope and guidance to others facing adversity. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Carol. Wow, that sounds pretty intense, but
Yeah,
yes.
you want to meet this person, don't you?
Yeah, I'd like to meet them.
I
Yeah.
know. That's why you're here. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to you now, Andy. You share your story and touch, of course, on the different things that we already talked about.
Yeah, I think, Carol, so first, thank you for allowing me the time to be here. The intent behind all of this is to share with people for the purpose of letting them know that where they are, somebody else has been there or been in similar, maybe not as difficult, but similar circumstances, and
Mm-hmm.
that person is still around. And ultimately, do not lose hope. And no matter what you've been through, whether it is physical or sexual abuse, or you've had some, ego crushing, self-confidence crushing events that have happened, you've had
Mm-hmm.
setbacks, you've had a divorce, you've lost a job, you've, all the way through to having severe health problems or the loss of a spouse or a child. The experience of your life can continue, and you can find some level of enjoyment in this life in spite of the things that have happened to you. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really, the intent behind sharing this is to hopefully help people never quit.
Right.
It started, I guess, like everybody's does, early in life. You have these things that occur, sexual abuse, and then, there were two men that were very important in my life, my grandfather and my father. They couldn't have been more different. My grandfather was a verbally abusive person, but he was instrumental in my life and very important to me. I learned early in life to do your best to take the good and leave the bad. So I learned from those people, and And along the way, I decided that if I was going to continue to survive, I needed a purpose. I need something that
Mm,
was larger than just either making money or, achieving something. I needed something bigger than that, something that could sustain me. And for me, that became, kind of a phrase that came to my mind was changing 3 generations of bad behavior. So I
mm,
looked back at my ancestors and I thought, wow, they taught me a lot. They were resilient people in their own right. They didn't quit in the face of adversity, but there were some things over the last 3 generations that maybe got propagated down through the family tree that would have been better if they hadn't been propagated down. And so I decided that
mhm,
part of my purpose would be changing for my family and my children and their families, working to change those things. So take an honest look at what they did that could have been different. Take an honest look at myself of how that had impacted me and what I was carrying forward, and make some different decisions about what I wanted to leave the future. And I think without realizing it, having having adopted kind of a purpose larger than myself, almost one that I really couldn't attain, right? I mean, it's if I wanted to be CEO of a company, I could probably get there. If I wanted to, make $1 billion, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to sacrifice enough to get there if that's what I really wanted to do. But I decided I needed something larger than myself to kind of carry me through. And the future seemed like a really big thing to hang on to. Could I change the future? Or prevent the past from negatively influencing the future as much as possible. And so I kind of set my mind to that. And then as difficult things happened, kind of inadvertently, what that gave me was it gave me something to hang on to and look forward to. It gave
mm,
me, something that when there were a lot of reasons to quit or to give
right.
up, it gave me something to hang on to that would kind of pull me through. And so that's really, I think, kind of the story of my life has been, and I will say, I think and it's one of my core beliefs is having insatiable curiosity. And I do think that the foundation of resilience, the foundation of surviving is curiosity. It is the thing that whenever we're in grief, whenever we're anxious, whenever we're in depressed, and all those things I have been, um, being curious, our minds can only focus on one thing at a time. And so being curious about something, how a light switch works, how your computer mouse works, uh, how grass grows. I mean, as silly as those things may sound, focusing your mind on something else, being curious about something else, takes your mind off the anxiety, takes your mind off the depression, takes your mind off the thought of giving up, and for a few minutes it puts it on something else.
Isn't
And
that how abuse victims function?
I think so. I mean, I think for myself, finding something to take your mind away from,
Hmm.
not
Right.
confronting, but people have asked me like after our son's passing, how do you not get stuck? And I think part of getting stuck is um, losing one's curiosity about anything other than the grief that you're experiencing. And
Mm,
I saw this visual one time. I'm a visual person. So when you speak, Carol, some people hear words. I see pictures. I don't
I
hear words. I
I
see pictures.
totally agree. I hear you 100%.
Yeah. And so I saw this visual one time and it said, when your grief is all encompassing, it's like having a picture frame, a small picture frame, and everything in the picture frame is black. It's just a hole. It's where this thing that you've lost once was, but now it's not there anymore. And that the objective is to create a larger picture frame so that
Hmm.
the whole that was the entire picture frame, it remains the same size. As your picture frame, as your life experiences grow, the picture frame has to grow to, incorporate all your life's experiences. And people would say to me, and well, you'll get past this or it'll heal with time. I don't believe those things. I
Hmm.
think that whole remains. The question is, will it remain as the entirety of the picture of your life?
Wow,
Or
that's
will it become,
excellent. Yep.
yeah, will it become, it can remain the same size, but if you can use your curiosity to continue to grow your life's experiences, forcing the picture frame of your life to get bigger, then that loss will be a smaller percentage of the whole. It remains the same size. And I think one of the things in all of these experiences that has helped me not get stuck because, we can stop, but the universe keeps turning, the universe keeps moving. And one of the things that's helped me not get stuck has been I am curious. And that curiosity allows me to find something to put my mind toward. And when I put my mind on that, it increases the experiences of my life. And when it increases the experiences of my life, I can't get stuck on that one thing. And I realized that another way that I looked at being stuck was if I stay in that experience with my son, I found him after he had taken his life. If I stay in that
Oh,
moment with
wow.
him, then that's being stuck. Like I will always just be focused on that moment with him. So one of us had to make a decision. And my decision was I would not stay with him, but I would not leave him behind. I would bring him with me. And so by bringing him with me, that hole in my picture remains. I never leave him. He's always with me, but I'm not going to stay where he was.
Hmm.
He's going to
Hmm.
have to come with me through my life. And so my picture frame gets bigger. He's always a part of it. That hole never gets smaller, but it does become a smaller percentage of my life. And I think curiosity is
Hmm.
what drives one's picture frame of their life to get larger. I don't know. Does that make sense at all,
It makes
Carol?
total sense. And I'm also thinking curiosity, if I'm following you correctly, also encourages you to look at others instead of yourself.
You kind of have to, right? That curiosity can take you places that you would have never imagined.
Right.
It can introduce you to new relationships. It can introduce you to new circumstances. It can take you to faraway places. It can take you to new places that are near you that you never thought about before. It can cause you to look at the trees and the sunshine differently. I remember my grandmother lost her youngest child, way back in the 30s, in 1930s, to cholera, I think it was. And she told me that there was a period after she lost him that she could see everything in the world, but it was black and white. There was no
Hmm.
color to it, and that through her faith, she had decided not to kill herself. Like it was overwhelming grief.
Right. Right.
And she was a very strong woman. Like she was one of the strongest women I've ever met, one of the strongest human beings I've ever. But she told me, and the couple things that she said that I've never forgotten. Two things, two conversations I had with her that I will always remember. And one was she said, "If you stay the course long enough, the color will return."
That's really good.
Yeah, I never forgot that. And so it helped me after my son's passing, because it reminded me that someone else had been through that, and that they told me that if you just hung on long enough, the color would return. And so I think the curiosity, it gives you a chance to meet people like that can just say that one thing to you that can help you live another day, that can help you get to the next thing. So it's just super important that you don't, that you grieve, you don't pretend like it doesn't exist. You experience it, you live through it, but you don't stay with it. It's better to bring your grief with you as you expand your experiences and experience more of life. Bring your grief with you. Just don't stay in it. So yeah, I think curiosity is key, and I think it does help you focus on other people, because it gets you out, and then you find that you can share something with someone. Like you've hung on long enough to be able to encourage someone else to hang on. And it's honestly, Carol, in this life, that's about I think that's one of the critical things that we do in this life is that my wife has this little placard that says, we're all just walking each other home.
I like what you were saying in relation to the whole concept of forgiveness, because as you were talking, I was thinking I had 40 years in the wilderness where I don't know if you know anything about my story, but it was terrible for 40 years in so many aspects of my life. And it wasn't until I decided to share my story, which was about 15 years ago, same time I started this podcast, that I began to realize how many other people's lives were affected by so many of the same things,
Hmm.
but being able and how they responded, how they handled it, etc. People often say that I'll forgive you but I won't forget, and that used to bother me, but now I realize that that's really very important, because what you are saying is those things are still with you. It's how you're dealing with them. You haven't forgotten them. You're not denying that they ever happened, which some people choose to do, but you are not allowing it to control your life. And that's where the aspect of forgiveness comes in. Would you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And I think that, I think the whole denial part, like just to pretend, and I think we've all seen people like that. We've probably all been that person. I mean, I know I have. At some point, you're like, well, the way to deal with this is I'll just ignore that it happened. I'll just pretend it didn't happen. I'll just deny that that's having an impact on my life or that that's causing me to make the decisions I'm making. And I think by denying it and not accepting it, not taking responsibility, I'm not saying like in sexual abuse you're responsible for that, but at some point we become responsible for allowing it to continue to influence
Right.
us to make bad decisions, right? We are responsible for how we allow these circumstances to influence us. And I think if we don't face them, it's kind of like when somebody says, "Don't think about a pink elephant." And then so you struggle to not
Right.
think about a pink elephant. You just all you can think about are pink elephants. And I think ignoring the things that have happened to us or pretending or denying them causes our energy to be focused on the effort of
Hmm.
denying that they exist.
Right.
It's
Right.
like all of a sudden the pink elephant's everywhere.
Yeah. Like
Um,
very
and
well
so
stated.
and so now I think what causes the focus is the for is the not forgiving part, right? So it's not like you have to forget it because I don't know that, like I don't know that we ever truly forget the things that
Hmm.
happen
Hmm.
to us. But the forgiveness part, I think, is how we separate concentrating on the pink elephant. Like all of a sudden
Mm.
you no longer have to focus on forgetting, right? It just becomes a part of your picture frame. Like it just becomes a part of it. And you may glance at it every now and then. You may recognize that it's there, but it doesn't hold you captive. I remember when I was going through, I went through EMDR, and it's never a good sign when you're with your therapist in the beginning and they're taking notes on what they're going to cover in EMDR.
Hmm.
And it's like a legal pad and they get to the bottom of the first page and they turn that page and then they keep writing and then they get to the bottom of the second page and they turn that page and they keep writing. And you're like, man, are we like, and they're like, well, it's going to take a little while. And I remember she said to me, I said, well, I'm not doing all that. I'm just like, I'm not doing 3 pages. What's like this? How long, like, because in the beginning it was like, well, maybe we'll do 6 or 8 sessions. And I was already like, not going to do that. And she goes, well, I think for everything to cover everything, I think it'll take us 24 sessions. And I said, absolutely not. I will not relive this for
Mm.
24
Right.
sessions.
Right.
And she said, Andy, um, you only have one choice. And the choice is this: you can relive and process through um, what your life has been for 24 hours. That's one day. That's one day. Or you can process it and live with it every day for the rest of your life. And I thought, that's unfair. Math is unfair. Um, because I thought, well, obviously 24 hours, one day of dealing with my life would be better than dealing with it every day for the rest of my life. And I didn't understand, like I thought EMDR would be about, processing things and learning to deal with them. And, I mean, as I've worked to understand what the process was, the really interesting thing that I found from it, Carol, was, and I think this is whatever someone does, I'm not a huge talk therapy fan, just for the sake of continuing to talk about things ad infinitum. But I do think things that you can do. So with EMDR, what I realized was, as I processed, I ended up having a lot of anger, hatred toward people who had done things to me or toward
Right, right.
circumstances. And people had talked about forgiveness. I'm a religious person. I believe in the Trinity. I do, and you want to, forgive. How many times should I forgive? 7 times? And he's like, no, 7 times, 70 times. Like you should forgive. And I thought, and I would say the words, and I would work to forgive people, but the anger didn't leave, right?
Mm,
So, have I really done it? Have I somehow, but I would say all the things and do all the things that I really wanted to, I wanted to get past it. And what I realized was with EMDR, what it helped me do was once I was able to disconnect the emotion of the pain of these things that had occurred, it was then that I was able that was almost like the process of forgiveness because those people had gone on. They had moved on in life. The people who sexually
exactly.
abused me,
Yeah.
my son obviously was no longer here. Things that had occurred, my oncologist, who'd given me bad information and done, they had moved on with their life. I wasn't even a thought to them, but I was still dealing with it. And I realized the reason I could never truly forgive, was because every time I thought about that circumstance, it brought back the pain and the anger of that circumstance. So somehow I was reliving it. And then the anger came, and then the focus came. And so I would say I had forgiven them, but I was still like attached to the emotion of what had happened. I was attached to the anger, the pain, the hurt. And once I was able to separate that with EMDR, process through that, then I think I was able to get to a place the way you describe of not forgetting but having forgiven. Like the forgiveness to me was the separating the emotional pain from the thing
Hmm.
that had happened. So the thing that had happened, I could remember without having the emotional pain attached to it. Does that make sense? Like it
Yeah,
was,
and yes, very much. And there's a saying that, and I can't remember how it goes, you probably know, where how does it go? That when you don't forgive someone, the only person you're hurting is yourself.
yeah, yeah. But how do you do that?
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Well, you've basically you shared that already for the last 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was like this light bulb went off,
Yes, yes.
and
What
it
it
was like,
what is EMDR?
eye movement desensitization, EMDR. I think the R stands for like rapid or repetitive or something.
Okay.
But the idea, the idea of it is that a trained therapist will like for me, I had these things in my hands that I held between my first and second, my index and my second finger, and my thumb, and then I had on a headset. And I would have this alternating like buzz in my fingers. So in my left fingers, this little buzzer would buzz, and then there would be like this tone in my right ear,
Oh my
and
goodness.
and it would alternate, while I was reliving the experience. So I would go back and I would remember and relive, which was super difficult, the sexual abuse,
Right.
or living through my mother's death, and or finding my son's body, which was really difficult to go
No
through. I mean, it
kidding.
took
Gee.
time and time and time again because my mind would block it, and everything would be, there's a whole like experience there going through that. But what it does, they think it was originally they found it treating Vietnam War veterans in the late 70s, early 80s as a way to help them with PTSD. And they think what it does is that like when you have an experience, your brain builds like a neural pathway to remember that experience. And then any other experiences in your life that your brain thinks are similar enough, it uses that same neural highway, that same pathway to process it. And so then it becomes like a thing where events in your life or circumstances day to day that are completely unrelated to this thing that happened to you get processed down that same neural pathway, and you end up having the same physical and neurological responses to it that you
Hmm.
did. So, like, I might have something completely unrelated to my son's suicide or to having been sexually abused, and this thing would happen. My wife would say something, or I would be in traffic and something would happen, and my brain would, for whatever reason, would send that event down that same neural pathway. And I might have the exact same emotional response, anger, hatred,
Right, right.
rage, I might have these things. And then you'd say, well, where did that come from? And so they
Mm,
think that by going through this process of reliving the memories, but using these, like this thing that basically makes your eyes move, and it's these things that change your sensory perception while you're
mm.
having the memory or reliving the memory, it forces your brain to build a new neural pathway. And so it
Wow.
separates the new one from the old one. So as you process it, when you relive it, it creates this new neural pathway for you to process that doesn't have all the old emotions with it. I'm probably not doing justice
Oh,
to
that
what
no,
it
that
is.
that helped explain it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So what happens is then you can remember a thing without all the emotions attached,
Right. Okay.
which to me kind of got down to the whole thing about forgiveness. It's like, well, I can't forget,
Mm-hmm.
but what if
Mm-hmm.
I could get rid of all the emotions attached to the
Exactly.
event? Then maybe I wouldn't hate them so much.
Right. Well, we're going to take a 15-second break. And when we come back, I would like you to share your core beliefs and your book, and we'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Well, this has been enlightening to say the least, Andy, and I really appreciate what you have already shared, and it helped me to understand even some of my past. And so I thank you for that from a personal level as well. So I'd like you to please now share your book and your core beliefs, however you would like to expound on each one or just pick a couple or whatever. But tell us about your book and thank you.
Yeah. So the book came out of almost unintentionally. Well, it was unintentionally. I had finally had I'd never stopped working during my cancer treatment or through my son's suicide. I mean, I'd taken some time off, but not like a significant period of time. Work had seemed to help me kind of get through it. It had given me something to get up and do in the mornings. But a few years ago, a couple years ago or so, maybe 2024, um, I'd finally just become exhausted, couldn't go in any look. So I took a leave of absence from work for 90, 100 days, something like that. And during that time, in the first 30, probably the first 30 days or first 15 days, you're like, well, why did I even do this? I'm not that exhausted. I probably should just be back at work. And then about day 16 or so, the exhaustion kicks in. And then, for a couple of weeks or so, you just can't move. I was just thoroughly spent and exhausted. I had no idea how exhausted I'd been from all the cancer treatments and everything that comes along with that. I'd been through EMDR, dealing with my son's passing and the cancer, and I thought I'd learned some things. And a few friends and one of my physicians has said, Andy, at some point you should sit down and write a book, like you didn't die from pancreatic cancer. And write this stuff down. And I was always against that. I was like, well, I don't want to just, what am I going to do? Just write a book about, sexual abuse as a child, or I'm going to write a book about, cancer. I'm going to write a book about suicide. Those do not seem like positive topics to me.
Hmm.
I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about them, honestly. I spent a lot of time trying, to move on, not think
Right,
about it.
right.
Um, but I had this time and I was kind of bored about 30 days in. I started to get bored, but I knew I wasn't ready to go back to work yet. I was starting to realize that the cancer treatments, nothing is free. And while I was still alive, the cancer treatments had in fact taken a huge toll on my body. I'd done a lot of chemotherapy, immunotherapy, the PARP inhibitor. I had put, my body had been through a lot. I'd survived, but I wasn't the same person. And so I started thinking, well, one day I just started writing some stuff down, and I'd had, these 15 core beliefs. I'd spoken on them to a couple of groups before, but just in passing, like nothing, I'd done a couple like little speaking engagement things. Um, and so I started just kind of writing down. I said, well, like if I had these 15 things, I wonder if I would write, like, if I was going to explain it to someone in writing, like I would, I'd have to put something around it. So for each one, I just started writing like on a note card, and then that turned into like one page. And, um, over, I don't know, 6 weeks or so, I had ended up kind of taking this thing and putting together what I thought was a pretty good manuscript until I sent it to an editor, and they said, this is horrible. Um, and so they took it and they did quite a bit of work to it. And we went back and forth. And then I kind of got the idea, well, I'm not going to write a book about, I'm not, the book wasn't about or isn't about cancer or childhood sexual abuse or death or, suicide. It's not about any of those things. I wanted to have something that was more about hope and, but being realistic about life. Life at times sucks, and there are bad things that happen, and there's evil in the world, and but we can still persevere. And there are some things that I observed that I wrote down that I think are kind of universal. And so if I could share that, and one or two people in the world might decide to keep going, or might decide to not kill themselves, or might decide to, look at the world as a beautiful place instead of just a terrible place, then that would be something worth writing down. And so that's kind of how the book came about. First half is about the 15 core beliefs, and the second half of the book is about, more some practical things that people can do, uh, to overcome, as it were,
Hmm.
overcome these very difficult setbacks that happen to us, whether it's finding community, finding faith, finding, kind of practical things that one can do. So that's the book. And the core beliefs are just really, they're things that I observe through my life. Again, I'm visual, so I see pictures, right? I don't really, I observe something and it kind of forms a picture in my brain. That's what gets stored in memory as this picture. But I couldn't really call up a picture when a circumstance happened and I needed to remember, some thing that I believed was kind of a universal truth. So I started putting little cliches around it, little phrases, and that became like a meta phrase, right? I could call that meta phrase up. No one outruns the universe. It's a way that I can remind myself
Mm.
that, a thing I observed, this picture in my mind is that the universe has guardrails. The creator made it in a certain way. And it's one for me to remember not to become arrogant and not to become self-centered, because the universe was created to function a certain way. I am part of the universe. I am not the universe. And it also reminds me that those that I think, have done something that is unjust, or cruel, that the universe again has guardrails, and that no one outruns the universe, and that I don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time on retribution, or focused on hate, or uh, any of those things that can consume a human. That the universe has a way of, it is bounded, it has guardrails, and it functions a certain way. So live inside those boundaries, function inside those boundaries and know that everyone else has to function inside those boundaries too. Another one that is really important to me is the idea that there are no hard decisions, there's only hard consequences. I was going through chemotherapy. I knew the chemotherapy was killing me faster than it was killing the cancer. I'd had good
Mm.
results, but I couldn't sustain it. Like it wasn't killing the cancer faster than it was killing me. And I had this little still small voice after my 15th, 14th round, and then
Oh,
confirmed after
wow.
the
Wow.
15th one that, you need to stop. And in my mind, I thought I was, I kept pushing it out of my mind, Carol, because I thought, I can't stop. If I stop, I'll die. And I've seen my mother die from cancer. It was not a pretty sight at all. I don't want to die that way. Pancreatic cancer is bad, and I don't want to leave my children with the memories I have. Like I had all these things in my head that were really loud that were saying, "Don't stop chemotherapy." But my wife had told me, she had told me that it was clearly becoming toxic to me. She was concerned that I would, like I was going to die from it. I was concerned that I was just going to get up one morning and start bleeding out, or my organs were just going to be,
Right. Right.
turned to mush. Um, and there's this really soft voice that kept kind of coming through in my mind that kept saying to me, "It's time to stop." Now I thought it
Mm.
meant it was just time to stop and die, you
Oh,
know?
okay.
Well, I mean, you kind of come to those
Of
terms with it,
course.
right? I mean, you look at you go, well, if I at that time there were no real treatment options for it that I was aware of. And so, you just kind of had this thing where it was like, well, if I stop, then I'm probably going to get 6 or 8 months of life. I'll probably have at least a period of time that'll be a better quality of life than just being on chemotherapy. And so I'll do that. My daughter, who has the same genetic mutation I have, had found this place at the University of Pennsylvania that was running a trial, and it just happened to be for a trial that met like I was a perfect candidate. I
Mm.
had this genetic mutation. I had pancreatic cancer. I was in my 50s. I think I was 53 when I was diagnosed. Um, I had responded to the chemotherapy, meaning, it had caused a reduction in the size of the tumors in my pancreas and in my liver, like that, the tumors had shrunk, so I'd had a good response to the chemotherapy. But everybody in that part of the cancer treatment knows that you're not going to survive it. You can't survive the chemotherapy.
Mm.
So I was a good candidate. But I was at a point where I was just going to quit. I didn't know any of that at the time. I was just like, I'm done. And so when I said I was done, my general physician, who's quarterbacked me all the way through this, a wonderful human being who he is insatiably curious. That's why he's a physician and not just a doctor. Um, he said, well, if you're gonna stop the chemotherapy, at least let's do this fasting thing. So he had read all this stuff about fasting and cancer and glucose, and so he talked me into doing a 10-day water only fast. We're trying to get to 20 days, but I got to 10 days. Body was pretty broken and worn down by then. And I got to 10 days only, and it was really a turning point, really a turning point. Like my
Mm.
body cleaned itself out. Like I felt like the toxicity from the chemotherapy got cleaned out. My really at that point was like a huge turning point in my treatment. Uh, it just felt like my body had finally started seeing the cancer. I don't know how if that's accurate but that's kind of what
Hmm.
went through my mind. But it was during this 90 days of quitting chemotherapy, stopping chemotherapy, doing a 10-day water only fast. Then he talked me into trying one more chemotherapy because they thought there was some evidence that if you did these fast and then tried the chemotherapy, maybe the reaction wouldn't be as bad. So I did the 10-day water only, and then I did a 5-day water only fast. And immediately on the fifth day of that 5-day water only fast, I did chemotherapy again. I still had terrible reaction to it, really bad reaction to it. And so, but in that 90-day window, my daughter had found this cancer trial at the University of Pennsylvania. And so after the 16th round, I was like, that's it. I'm done. Can't do it anymore. And then my wife called and got me in this trial. And, I'm still here today.
How
So,
long ago was that?
That was 2019.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, but that whole story though is about this loud voice and this small and this quiet voice. And the quiet voice kept telling me it's time to stop chemotherapy. You have to stop the chemotherapy. What I didn't know was that it was telling me to stop the chemotherapy because in that 90 days I was going to go through this fast, I was going to do this other chemotherapy. And then in that 90 days, this window was going to open where I was going to go into this trial at the University of Pennsylvania. Now, the trial ended up almost killing me at one point because the immunotherapy attacked me, attacked my intestines, and that's a whole other story. But the point is, if I had listened to the loud voice, what I realized was it really wasn't a hard decision to stop the chemotherapy. The soft voice was telling me it's time. I knew it was time. I knew the chemo was killing me faster than the cancer. I knew I couldn't sustain it. It wasn't a hard decision. But people say it. We all say it. Oh, that was a hard decision to stop chemotherapy. It wasn't. It was a really easy decision. What was hard was the consequences that the loud voice kept yelling at me about how bad the death was going to be. How could you possibly stop? Why are you why are you going to be so weak as to stop the chemotherapy when that's your only treatment? Are you really going to give up? Are you going to do this to your wife and children? Are you going to like the loud voice was just telling me all the hard consequences. But that was the only consequences my mind knew. It didn't know about any of the positive things that were going to happen. And so,
Right, right,
there
right.
are no hard consequences. There are no hard decisions, only hard consequences is a phrase that reminds me. And I've just recently gone through something else where I referred back to that. And I was thinking, this feels like that moment with cancer. I'm being told to stop doing this thing, to do the next thing. But this loud voice is yelling at me about how risky it is, how big the consequences are. And I ended up deciding to do the thing the quiet voice was telling me because it really wasn't a hard decision. And so, that's one of the things I hope to share with people is look, when there are times when you have to listen to the loud voice. If you're facing a Bengal tiger, you're in the jungles of India and you're facing a Bengal tiger, I'd listen to the loud voice. If it's telling you to run, run. If it's telling you to get away from the tiger, get away from the tiger. That's just not the situation 99.9% of the time. A lot of the times, the loud voice is trying to protect you, but it only knows what it knows. I think
That's
that's
good.
why I think that's why it's so important to do things like meditation, prayer, spending time in scripture, spending time in meditation, spending time in nature. What all those things do is they give us a chance to hear the quiet voice, the soft voice. And that's the one I suggest people listen to because it's going to tell you something and it may seem like it's asking you to make a hard decision. I would counsel you to not think in those terms. Don't think in the terms as the soft voice telling me to make a hard decision. What it's telling you is it's not a hard decision. It's just the loud voice is making it appear that way.
That's
And so,
excellent.
you know, use those quiet times. I don't have a very quiet mind, so I struggle with that. But when you can get there, and if you feel that quiet, soft voice telling you to do something, I'm not saying you have to listen to it, but I am suggesting you should pay attention. So those
Couldn't.
are, there's 15 of them. I won't go, through
No,
all of them.
yes,
They're
I
in the
see
book,
that.
but,
Excellent.
those are a couple and I've already mentioned, having insatiable curiosity.
As I was looking through their list, the one that really struck me was thinking versus knowing.
Mm, yeah.
And that's learning how to hear your spirit instead of your mind.
Well, it is. And it's also, it kind of ties in with the curiosity piece. And I think it absolutely draws on, kind of the spirit mind, sometimes conflict. But there are things that we think, your mind just knows what it knows. And
Exactly.
so, you think you know something. I thought that if I stopped chemotherapy, that would be the worst outcome. I thought there would be no way to get past my son's suicide. I thought, you know, but it happens in every little thing. It happens all the time, and every day we make decisions. I think that person said that about me. I read an
Right,
email
right,
and I
right.
think this is I think this is the face they were making and the intent they had behind it when they typed that message. You don't know that. You don't know what they intended. You just know that you read an email,
Hmm.
and your mind
Hmm.
is like, well, I think
Right,
this.
right, right.
And so, that particular phrase is like a remembrance to me. Well, it's a remembrance to be curious, right? It's like, well, do you really know? Mind, I talk to myself, mind. I used to know this guy who used to say, self. I said to myself, self. And I thought that was the funniest thing, but he would always tell me that. He would say, Andy, I said to myself, self, do you really know that? And if you don't know, be curious and find out. Ask the other person, did you intend, what was your intent behind that? If you don't know, what a circumstance is, be curious and find out. Have the conversation internally with yourself. And I think it's just critically important. We're all going to make decisions every day about things that we don't actually know. We don't know all the information we need to know to make the right decision. But there's a lot more that we can know than what we know today or at this moment. We can ask ourselves, well, do you just think that you have the answer? Do you just think that what you're thinking is correct? Have you put any effort into determining if there's more information that you can know? And so that little phrase, thinking versus knowing, is just something that I work to remind myself, do you really know or do you just think you know? And if you don't know, and it's something that you can get the information and learn about or know, like I can just ask somebody, well, what did you mean by that? Like that seems a simple thing to do, you know, like, Carol, what did you mean by that? Or Carol, this is the way I took it. Did you intend it that way? And then if Carol says, yeah, I really did intend it that way, then at least I know, you
Exactly.
know? And so, yeah, I like that one a lot.
One thing I wanted to say at the end here is something that you wrote me, and I think it was a blurb for your book, and I love it. And that says, imagine a life where you can overcome any setback, withstand any loss, and triumph over any trauma. Embrace any challenge and thrive. Your path to resilience starts here. And so I want to encourage the audience to check out your book. And I know that there will be many people who have been touched by what you have shared today in many different aspects of the different things in your life. And also, it's, I believe, a story that we need to listen to more than once. And so I encourage the audience to digest it. And you've had so much to share, and I so thank you so very, very much for today being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you, Carol. And never ever give up hope.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.